Whether you're new to pool and practicing the basics, or a more experienced player performing drills to improve your shot making and positional play, the Drill Partner is perfect for you.
PremierBilliards.com. Exceptional cues, cases, and accessories from top-tier brands. Want it? Need it? Find it. PremierBilliards.com.
I don't even know how to use this stuff anymore, Mike.
I don't know if anybody's going to recognize who the hell the guy on the top of the screen is.
Yeah, what do you mean? I've been around a little bit, Mike. Where you been?
I've been around.
How's everything going, man?
Everything's good.
I wonder if anyone's gonna get these notifications, because it's been about a month or so since we've done the show. As I was editing everything, it's been a little bit more than that. You know, it's hard doing things on the road, Mike, because number one, internet connection. Number two, especially being in the Pacific Northwest, motivation just gets away from me sometimes, Mike. You know what I mean? There's sun, there's good weather, good people. So it's it's been a good time, man. July was busy for me, Mike. August is going to be busy. October is going to be crazy busy. I really don't know where to begin at, Mike. There's so much stuff going on in the pool world, Mike. What say you?
Well, there's tons of stuff going on, but really, if you look at it from the pro side, it's really been kind of quiet. I mean, July was a really quiet month on the international event scene. There was a lot of events in the U.S. There were some events in Europe and Asia. But none of the big, let's get all these guys in the same room type of events. So it was actually kind of a quiet month from that standpoint. But still enough action to change some of the rankings and kind of sets things up for the last second half of the year, which is going to be packed. I mean, really, there's been two, major open events. And while the World Championship's not really open, but the major international events, just the UK Open and the World Pool Championship. So still got three left with the European Open, US Open, and Hanoi Open. So a lot of things going to change between now and the Hanoi Open. So it's starting. It'll ramp up now. It'll get pretty topical and pretty exciting from here on in.
I remember going to the U.S. Open last year, Mike, and there was just it was so intense at the end of it, of match by match, round by round, what guys are going to go where, how it's going to affect Moscone Cup rankings, and then now we got the Reyes Cup introduced into that. It's funny you mentioned July was kind of boring because I was on the road for like 3 weeks, man, from junior nationals to a ranking event out at Oscar's place, which was great. Congratulations to Tyler on winning that one. But then, I think about it, Mike, and you're right, because it's like I don't want to say divide, but like there's seasons, there's things going on in different parts of the world. It's hard to keep up with. I see the Copenhagen won an event out in Asia. I know there's an event going on like in Finland. I noticed like some of the European Opens on the horizon, which is going to be the next big one where, we're going to have guys get announced. It's a formality at this point for the guys in the one spot, but there's still like some shifting that's going to be going on, which is still pretty cool in the next little bit of time, Mike.
Yeah, there's a lot at stake because, all of a sudden, the prize money gets a little bit bigger than, a $5,000 or $8,000 first prize. That some of these, kind of regional-ish ranking events are doing, or national ranking events. One in the U.S., one in Europe, one in Asia. I mean, it's great that they're doing that, but it's also kind of great that the players get that month where their big travel is going from Northern California to Oregon or Washington or something like. It's a little different than crisscrossing the globe. So, I've always kind of hoped that at some point the professional tour type of thing would have that kind of couple of month window to give people the time to kind of regroup and recharge and do some stuff on domestic, whether they're in Europe or Asia or the US. So, it's kind of working out all right.
Yeah, I mean, there's this like concrete calendar that's in place, and then like throughout the year we seem to have like, oh, let's throw in Jason's event, and oh, let's throw in, this event that just gets added in there. And while I can appreciate it and I enjoy it, and of course we all love, follow and pull, it's tough on some of these guys, and travel wise and planning out their lives, and things like that. But there's not any shortage of things to watch, Mike, because if you think about it, just in the grand scheme of things, it's like, man, from women's pool to men's professional pool, there's so much stuff going on. I want to touch base on the Moscone Cup, Mike, because that's always going to be, the topic of conversation throughout the year.
Yeah.
We're let's talk about the Americans for a little bit, because Tyler's in the two spot, and I'm curious to get your thoughts on where we are 6 months into the year, or now 8 months into the year, rather.
Well, we know that the Moscone Cup, sequence of automatic spot picks is different than the Reyes Cup, right? So there isn't even, an automatic number. The number one automatic pick hasn't even been formally announced, right? I mean, it kind of has, because Federer's, a lock for that. So really, the European Open is going to have no impact on the Moscone Cup as far as the automatic spot goes, because we already know
Kachi is in one.
Kachi and Federer are the ones. So we really won't see anything really dramatic happen until the U.S. Open. So right now, yeah, Tyler has done really well last two, kind of domestic ranking events. He's won, and so he's in a good spot. He's about $4,000 ahead of Shane, but we still got two big tournaments coming up to determine who that second wild card spot or that second automatic spot's going to be for. So lots going to happen between the European Open and the U.S. Open. That's two big shots for anybody who's, if you look at the numbers, Tyler's in, second at 33,000, Shane's in third at 29, and Oscar at 25, BJ Austria at 22. So any of them does well at the European Open, and that list changes a bunch. And then you still have the U.S. Open to determine who that second automatic spot's going to be. So there's a lot of opportunity for anybody in the U.S. 2 through 10 to make a big move with these two big tournaments coming up.
Yeah, I mean, it's yours for the taking, Mike, right? And that's kind of what you want if you're playing. I remember last year, we're going through the events, and we're, at this point in 2023, and David wasn't even on my radar, Mike.
Right.
I mean, obviously he's been a staple of the European team for many, many years, but it was summertime when he made his move. Now here we are, a year later, and Tyler's kind of done the same. Created some separation there where 2 months ago we're talking about Oscar and him being in back-to-back semifinals to now Tyler being in the number 2 spot ahead of Shane. Look, we know Federer's going to make the team. We know Shane's going to make the team. Sky's interesting because Sky's going to be a wild card, right, Mike? And we all understand the reason why. But he's not in that top 5 right now, so which means that he would take up a wild card spot. But basically, it's going to be who's going to be the 5th spot for Team USA at this point. Is that?
Yeah, well, it is. I mean, and everybody's kind of making a foregone conclusion because Skyler right now only has about $8,000, so he's good 20 behind everybody. But again, there's three of the biggest events of the year are still to be determined, right? So, he has a nice run in 1 or 2 of them, and all of a sudden he's not a wild card. It doesn't take much at this point. It takes one really good finish and a couple decent finishes, and all of a sudden Skyler would be in the top 3 by Hanoi. I mean, you've got all 3 of these tournaments.
Do you think he'll make a top 8 appearance this year in a major?
Well, I mean, based on
the European, Hanoi, and U.S. Open, basically.
Yeah,
And I'll even give you the one prior to Hanoi. So let's throw in the Perry on top of that.
The Perry on top of that.
Yeah.
No, just no way to know. I mean, you're judging by.
We're gonna fire at Mike top eight over under for
in one of the final four events if you include Perry.
And if I'm including Perry, yeah, where would you clock him at?
I would say he's top 8. Wow, it's a coin flip.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you're going outside of top 8. I think I would go outside of top 8. Look, we know what his ceiling is, Mike, and we've seen him go deep. We've seen him have good runs, but we really haven't seen it this year, And when you think about, heading into this part of the season, and with the move and making these guys captains, right, Jason and and Sky. Look, we've seen Jason in a final already, if I'm not mistaken, this year, Mike. We've seen him continue to kind of put his foot on the gas still. Not to say that Sky isn't. We know he's got a lot of things going on. But I'm just talking about performance only, Mike. And by making him the automatic spot, right, which he would have already gotten a wild card even if he wasn't in the top 3. I mean, everybody knows that just because of his Moscone Cup performances over the year, Mike. But with the addition of Fedor becoming an American, right, it really makes this 5th seed real interesting. BJ's right now at number 5. I don't think, call me crazy, I don't think he gets in unless he gets in through automatic. That's just my, that's what my gut would tell me, Mike. But who would you have in right now as your 5th spot, and how much pressure does Sky have on him to, get as good of a team out there in December as he needs to?
Well, I mean, today, if you're saying that the locked up spots are who are you saying the locked up spots are?
I guess if everything were to stay the course, right? So I would say if
Fedor, Tyler, Shane, Sky.
Fedor, Tyler, Shane, and we know Sky's getting in on a wild card.
Then I would go with Oscar right now. Today I would go with Oscar, no doubt about it. But again, we got 3 big events to go. Now, I don't know. Is Billy Thorpe planning on playing in all 3 of these events?
Well, Billy's an interesting part of the conversation because you hear Fedor's podcast the other day, and they talk about the energy that he brings to the team, and that's something that throughout the year that I've been hearing about. That and listen, let's just keep it real. We know the relationship between Billy and Sky, Mike. And how much of an impact is that going to have on him getting in possibly?
I think it's going to make it tougher for Billy. I think it's going to make it tougher for Billy to get in because Skyler.
Why do you say that?
Because I think Skyler's going to be very sensitive to looking like he passed over someone who's better than Billy because he and Billy are friends. So in my mind, Skyler's thinking Billy's going to have to earn it. He's going to have to make it an easy decision for me. Otherwise, I'm going to get criticized for passing somebody over for my buddy, right? So you don't want to have that hanging over your head if you're Sky. So you want Billy to make it, but you want him to earn it so that it doesn't look weird. Does that make sense?
Well, I don't know if weird would be the word I'd use, but yeah, I get what you're saying.
Yeah, but for Billy to do that, to me, he's got to be out there. He's got to play in all 3 of those. He's got to play in all 3 of those.
I don't remember if he played in Des Moines or not. He was in. If he did, he didn't have any kind of.
I don't remember that one. But he's been kind of quiet. Since the World Championship. So I don't know. I'd be really interested to know what his plan is for the rest of the year as far as going to these other big events. Now, if you got a Shane Wolford who goes to all 3 of them, and you have a Oscar who goes to all 3 of them, or a BJ.
Well, it's interesting because you talk about Wolford, Mike, and Shane Wolford had a pretty decent Moscone Cup performance by, just in general. Not even by a rookie, not even by an American, but he held his own, so to speak, out there. But now, I wouldn't even include him in part of the conversation for this year, Mike. I ain't seen him.
Well, again, as I said, you got 3 big opportunities ahead of you, and I'm anxious to see which one of these guys show up for all 3, just as players, and then which one of them show up to all 3 or any of the 3 with any kind of real run. That to me, if I was Skyler, that would really tip the scales more than how did the guy do in Des Moines? How did the guy do, in Sacramento or in, wherever?
For sure. We all know with the measuring stick, Mike. It's when everybody gets together, right? Like that's the main thing, right? That's how you were to go and weight it, especially when you talk about guys who are like on the fringe. You're gonna have to. It's about quality wins at the end of the year, and these are the type of things that you're gonna go and look at, or at least you should, if you're making those kinds of decisions, Mike.
Yeah.
And right now there's like a pool of guys who are. Maybe they're on the outside looking in when it comes to the conversation. Maybe there's guys who are a bit of an afterthought. But, I mean, listen, we talk to players enough to know, Mike, what guys are being seriously considered and what guys aren't. I think it's probably between a few of them at this point going into the five. But if I'm a player, listen, it really makes these last couple of months interesting because we got August, September, and October. You got European, you got U.S., and you got Hanoi. Three
Right.
big events. You want it, go take it. Go look at what Albin did last year. Go look at what David did last year if you're on the American side. I'm sorry, if you're on the European side. So
And then, you're probably right. We're probably talking about, one spot for, BJ, Billy, Shane, and Oscar to fight for. Okay. So to me, it's like, it's really kind of a good setup because these are four guys you have to, say, okay, this is the race. You four guys, 3 tournaments. Who's going to come out on top in those 3 tournaments? It's pretty good, and each one of them's got to see it. I mean, they're not blind. They got to know that this is what they're up against.
Well, I mean, look, it's a catch-22, right? Because you've already gone this far if you're a player. So now it's, hey, listen, you're in the home stretch, right? So you got to go and dig deep a little bit, and if you want to go
this
and
isn't
take
even the home stretch. This is more than half the season ahead of you. You're not
yeah, but I mean, like, but
really,
it's gonna be a blink of an eye, Mike. Between here and Hanoi. You know what I mean? Like these guys are going to be back to back to back to back when it comes to the travel schedule and everything else coming up for the next few months. It's going to be super super intense, and that endurance, that finish line is going to be a struggle for some of these guys, Mike.
Yeah, it will be, and that's what you want to see out there. You want to see who handles this pressure. Who's up for the challenge.
Interesting comment in the chat, Mike, mentioning the World Cup of Pool.
What do you have to say about that, Mike?
is that your burner account there at Pinozo? Is that what that is?
No, that's not my burner account. But I agree. There hasn't been any kind of formal announcement about the. I went out and leaked information that's not a surprise to anybody, and kind of scalded myself over it. But there's been plenty of time in the meantime to make a formal statement about there will be no World Cup pool this year, and this is why. There will be no Spanish Open or no 5th Open event, or however you want to term it, this year, and here's the reason why. And and they don't really owe us a reason. They just say, but some kind of formal announcement, because you're talking about two.
No, I mean, listen, you can't ignore an elephant in the room, Mike. And listen, for me, the silence is what's making it the story. You know what I mean? Like, if things happen, let it be and just move on, right? There's so many things to go and talk about, but the silence is what's making it a little awkward, at least for me anyway. Now I was supposed to get Emily on maybe in June, and then that fell through. And then I was going to try to get her on with the Salado guys because they had an interesting thing going on where they announced where they're getting like a U.S. Open spot through the app. And I was going to get them on together, which I still need to follow up with Adam about now that I think about it. But it's like, listen, there doesn't need to be this awkward silence about it. You know what I mean? Let's just have it out and move on. For me, look, I love the World Cup pool.
They may have figured that I dropped it, so they don't have to follow up. I got to be the one to eat shit at it. But the thing is,
you're the scapegoat right now, Mike.
It's not to me, it's a really important thing because we keep talking about this great schedule and all the great things they're doing, which they are. But again, this is two $200,000 tournaments that are off the schedule that were on the schedule last year. That's a big hit for the players. And you can't tell me you're trading the Reyes Cup for the World Cup of Pool, because you're talking about 10 players. World Cup of Pool, you're talking at least 32. And the Spanish Open, you were talking about a full open field, 256. Everybody, so if you're looking at all the top players in the world, not the 10 that are going to play in the Reyes Cup, that's a big hit for this year. So, it just would be nice to get something formal about that out there. And everybody loves the World Cup pool because it's so exciting. It is one of the great things, one of the great events. Yeah. I think that there's, that it would just be better if you would make things, public.
It's a two-way street here, Mike, right? Like, we can't celebrate all these additions and if there's a subtraction, just acknowledge it is what I would get at, And so for when you think about the addition of the Reyes Cup, when we're talking about Moscone and things like that, and listen, we have this debate every year. What's a major? What isn't a major, Mike? Right? So like we can't deem the Spanish Open a major in 2023, and then in 2024 we're just going to pretend like, oh, it's not there anymore, and that's it. Because let's face it, an extra whatever it is, 40,000 to a winner or 25,000 to a second place would make a big shift in all these races, Mike. It'd make a big shift on the Asian side of players, on the European, and of course the
just for the notion of a tour itself. You go from 6 to 5 in a year. That's significant. So just would like.
Look, I love the World Cup of Pool, and when the Philippines wins, it makes it something special. I would want to see those guys get a chance to repeat. That's the reason why. When it comes to all these big events that we're looking forward to at the end of the year, it really makes no difference, on anything, Mike, right? Like, there are guys who we think like, oh, well, maybe he might be in a better position because if he wins this event, he may get considered more, right? Like like behind the curtain, so to speak. But like when it comes to standings, it makes no difference. But it's a fun event, right? The Scotch doubles, the representing your country.
Oh yeah, it's great. It's one of the best events they do, for sure.
By a mile for me, Mike. It's absolutely my favorite event. I love the chemistry of it, but it really just further adds a twist when I think about Moscone and Reyes, because you think about potential pairings and things like that, and these are just things that we would go and discuss in general. I'm a bit disappointed that it's not on there. As far as the announcement, just have at it. You know what I mean? I'm not gonna beat it down one way or the other. It's making it awkward not acknowledging it for me.
Yeah, just like, oh, we kind of passed through that month and it's not there, and we'll just keep moving ahead and talk about how great the tour is, and it's just those are big pieces of this whole thing that has been built up, right? Right. It's just conspicuous by its absence, and just like to know.
We talked about a lot of the Moscone Cup. We talked about the Americans as well. 2 Americans are going to be battling it out here in the next couple of weeks, Mike, but not against each other. I mean, not with each other, but rather against each other. Fedor and Shane. And I think the last show that we did is whenever we talked about Fedor and SVB. But I want to get your thoughts on maybe what does that do to the chemistry leading into December, if anything.
I don't think it does anything. I don't think the loser is going to not want to play doubles with the winner when it comes to Moscone Cup. This is just going to be a good old fashioned. Let's get in a room and beat each other up for 4 days or 3 days, and play for a bunch of money. And a bunch of people are going to tune in. I think it's going to be fun stuff. I don't think I don't anticipate.
I hope it's fun.
Yeah, I don't anticipate a bunch of animosity. You could see one person run away from the other, possibly, I guess, but I just think it's going to be a good old fashioned cage match.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting way of putting it, and I agree with you. Long race rotation can be a little tough. Like, it's great at the beginning, Okay, and then you're interested in it, and then it's like break and
Listen,
run
I'm not
and
going to
break
lie. I'm not going to
and
watch much of
run,
it.
break and run, and I might go out to Louisville. I don't know yet, Mike. I'm gonna book my flight here in the next probably day or so, and I think I'm gonna end up going out there. So it's just one of those matches where when you think of, I love listen like you, Mike. I love the history of the sport, and I really appreciate seeing like these big time matchups when it comes to just legacies and things like that.
Yeah.
And so for that reason, I is why I really want to go.
Yes.
Plus,
Being there and sit there and watch it. Yeah, for sure.
well, that's the tough part, Mike. It's like, man, listen, I've been
You don't have to show up for the first day, Mike.
I've been to a lot of these events, Mike, and well, look, the first day can make a big difference. The first day, it's like that can really
It's still
set the
going to come
tone
down to
for,
the
for
last day.
everything.
The
I
last
don't
day.
know, Mike. I don't know. I'm not so sure about that.
You don't want to
Because
sweat
what?
the last day, even if someone's way ahead. Anyway, Jeremy's in here someplace. Throw a comment in there, Jeremy. What do you give us? Who you
I think
like
he's
in
going to be
this and
doing
why?
commentary on that match, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Give us a little preview, JJ. But
yeah.
anyways, it's yeah. You don't have to watch every bomb, Mike.
Well, so I saw Shane in Sacramento. I saw Shane in Seattle.
Washington, yeah.
Shane's been practicing 10 ball. I can tell you guys that. And Shane, Mike, well enough. When you see him at a tournament, what's he doing in between like playing a match? He's going and
Right.
hitting ball. He's practicing his break. He's doing all these things. Yeah, I ain't seen him been practicing a whole lot of his 9 ball break. I'll tell you that because every little bit of downtime that I see of Shane, it's him racking 10 ball over and over again. And it just reminds me of like, the younger Shane.
Is he doing
Right?
that in Washington on the bar tables or what?
No, there's a few 9-footers there. There's a few
They're
9-footers there.
That's right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. There's a few 9-footers there in the room, and even from the very first night, whenever we went to the pool room, that's what he was doing. In Sacramento, the same thing. When he'd show up in the morning, he's there practicing his 10 ball break, and so I had a real good conversation with Shane. I think like he's excited for the match. Shane's got a lot of pride, as does Fedor. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Obviously, the money is going to be one thing to these boys, but in reality, I think it's the ego between both of them where they're like they don't want to lose to the other guy.
No doubt about it. One of them's
Like,
going to walk out of there as the 10-ball king, and neither one of them wants the other guy to walk out of there with that. So that's There's going to be more. There's going to be more ego on the
Well,
line.
Shane's held that crown for what, a couple of decades, Mike. Now, probably at least over 10 years.
I mean, not with a lot of challenge, right? Not with a ton of challenge.
Well, here's the thing: when you go and beat Chang, when you go and beat Dennis, when you beat I'm trying to think of who else, Jason, a couple of times, right? You kind of and you've been willing and open to play. I think he's beaten. I don't know if he's played who was also known to have a really big. My point is that like anyone who was close to being around the top, Shane was perfectly fine in playing for all these years.
Yeah,
you
right.
know, and so I know everyone's going to consider, and everyone does consider Federer number one. He's world 9-ball champion. We know how imposing he can be on there. We know what his 10-ball break is like whenever we do get to see it. But you gotta go and beat the man if you want to be the man. And for that reason alone, I want to tune in and watch. I think the stream is going to be pretty cool at like $30 or $40, whatever it is, and you can have great commentators. And it's just two guys who are going to go get after it, Mike. Like you said, a steel cage match.
Is this right before U.S. Open?
Yeah, it's right before the U.S. Open. So I think it's like
between Europe and U.S. Open.
Yeah, so I think it's like the 15th, 16th, and 17th, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe someone in the chat
Weird
can.
view that they're going to this big open, international 9-ball event, come back playing 10-ball for a weekend, and then going back and playing another 9-ball when they'll be practicing most for the 10-ball.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. And you know what? Listen, this is what I'd be curious about. And this is just me and you talking here, Mike. I mean, nobody watches this trash show anyway, okay? So this is just me and you talking here. Let me ask you a question here, Mike, between you and I. How
Everybody turn off your computer.
Put on your earmuffs for a little bit, okay? Let me ask you this. How excited or thrilled do you think Emily is to have her two like pinnacle players, right? Her two star players two guys who they market a lot
Yeah.
and all that, right? Year round, playing
Playing
10 ball,
Predators game.
playing playing 10 ball, Mike. I mean, just between
Yeah.
you and I.
Yeah, again, you got to look at it as a cage match. Something special, something different, something to get them excited. She's got to like that these two guys are drawing a lot of attention to themselves, because then when they turn around the 2 weeks before that, and they're in Fulda, and the week after that they're in Atlantic City, all the focus is going to be on them. So, as long as they're continuing to get big exposure for themselves as pool players, it helps World Nine Ball Tour. That's what I look at it. I don't know if she looks at it that way or not, but
Yeah, I mean, we'll never get the real answer to that question. I think I would say she hates it. I would say 100% she hates it, because it's, listen, for 10 ball was always like, if you think you're a bad man, if you think you're the best player, let's go play a big set of 10 ball. That's always been like the measuring stick, Mike, right? If you think and for whatever reason, right? 9 ball and slop and, the break. And maybe it's because of the way that it was in years past with the one on the spot, and players thought like it's super soft and big pockets and things like that. But for so many years, make no mistake about it, if you thought you're the best player, go play someone a big set of 10 ball.
Yeah, but you still get back to the fact that when there's the main tournaments around the world that everybody plays in, the ones with history, they're all 9 ball. There's no 10 ball tour. Well, Predators, the Pro Billiard Series, kind of was, but it didn't have all the players. So, if that was the big test, why weren't they all there? So, again, it just to me comes to, when you look at all the big events that everybody's watching on TV and following, they're 9 ball events. So these occasional head-to-heads and occasional World 10 Ball Championship are fine, but they're not shifting the balance of power on what everybody's watching as a professional circuit.
No. But I think it's a whole different conversation, though, is my point. Like it's not talking about who's the best tournament player. And this is where I think those two dudes in particular are just different than everyone else, right? Because, listen, you want to go and gamble something, they'll gladly accommodate you, right? Yeah. And I'm talking about either one of them, Shane or right. Fedor. You want to go and play something, they'll play you some. You want to play one pocket, they'll play you. You want to play 9 ball, they'll play you. They're tough as nails kind of guys, right? And you can knock the Americans for you spend waste too much time gambling. Guess what? They'll go get in your pocket and they'll take every bit that you got. Both of them will. Okay. But that's what separates like tournament players, right? You think about, and I don't want to name names, but I'm gonna name a little bit of names here, right? You think about guys like an Albin Ocean, or you think about guys very well decorated, right? Multiple time world champion, right? But like you don't think about them in that gambling like season kind of sense as like a Fedor or a Shane, right? They don't go and get in that mix, but that's fine because that's their realm versus the other realm, right? And I think some guys just can transcend that. Fedor and Shane are it. I think that it's great they're going to be playing one another. I do. I'd love for them to continue that outside of 10 ball. I'd love to see a nice set of one pocket as well. Maybe
what do you think about Kachi playing the winner?
Okay, so here's my thing. And I saw Kachi's comment, like whatever it was.
Yeah.
After they announced the match. I remember, and this was online, or maybe it was at an event or something, and it's got to be within the last couple of years, where Fedor was like, "I'll play you." Like, "Hey, you want to play some? We can play some." And in so uncertain terms, Kachi was like, "I'm good right now,"
Yeah.
And so it's interesting to see him be interested now. Now, whether or not he's willing to do it versus whether or not someone is willing to back him to do it is a completely different story.
Right.
We know how important the 10 ball break is. And we think about the elite of the elite players. We used to put Chang in that conversation. Kachi is for sure in that conversation. He's a 2-time world 10 ball champion. We know what a bad man that he is. I think that dude's overall game has just completely taken a whole other gear, and it's reflective in the last 2 years when you look at his ranking and his performances, whether on the World Nine Ball Tour or on any other tour, right? That's just my opinion on it.
Yeah.
But again, tournament, gambling, two different things. He's been known to gamble a time or two, obviously. I would love to see someone go and back it. I don't know if he's the guy who can say, I got next, right? I got winner. Because these other two dudes have been playing, big boys in their own right. But if he's willing to throw his name in the mix and someone's willing to put up some money for it,
that'll be fun to watch.
Yeah.
He's got some ego too. And so to hear these two guys talk about these two guys are going to play each other. These two are the best, by far the best 10-ball players in the world. And he's going, excuse me, I won the World 10-ball championship twice in 3 years.
Yeah.
That's a valid thing. So, but now, it would be time if once this is over for him to put up or shut up and make it happen. I'm thinking way too far ahead here, but do you like Kachi in a race to 120 over 3 days? I mean, I saw the matches at the World Championship take their toll on him physically over, a couple of days, right? His arm, his hand going numb, whatever it is. Now you're going to put him in there for, 8-hour sessions of 10-ball for 3 or 4 straight days. I don't know that I'd be really surprised if he could handle it.
That's a very interesting point, Mike. And as a lot of players are taking more care of their physical and their mental, right? Especially, with all the traveling and going around the world, that's a fair argument to be had.
And I think he's got the stamina to do it because he's a beast. But
that's a lot of. I'm not saying he's a big, he's not he's a.
He's a man child, no doubt about it.
He's a big dude. That's a lot of weight to be pulling around the table because you got to think about it, Mike. Those rounds are going to be 7 hours plus. Each one of those days is going to be at least 7 hours worth of play, that's assuming that one guy kind of stays the course and keeps their foot at least at a steady kind of pace, right?
Yeah.
And if it goes nip and tuck, or if the break is tough, look out, because then it could really make for a long day. I've seen it before, Mike.
Yeah, it can be a long day, and Mike, he is a big guy. But my concern more is, he's a guy who almost lost his arm. And if you've seen his arm up close, you're like, I can't even believe you can stretch that thing out and make a bridge. To me, it's just the idea of him leaning on that thing, especially with the break and all that stuff, for 7 hours a day for 3 days. That's a tall order.
Look, you can have that same argument with Fedor and his lower back. Right?
Yeah, you could. But Fedor's a pretty proven quantity on playing long time. We saw it at Derby.
Well, that's a fair statement to make, but that's only once a year, and that's at the beginning of the year, and that's after a little bit of a break. This is right in the middle of back-to-back.
It's also a week's worth of playing like that at Derby. Not just a 9-ball event.
Yeah, no, you're sucked in there for whatever it is.
He played 9 zillion hours of pool in a week. So, but anyways, it's interesting. Look,
and I'm curious to see how it's going to affect them for the rest of the year and for the major coming up right after that, which is the U.S. Open, Mike. I'll give this comparison, Mike. You're a baseball guy. I love baseball as well, right? There's guys who have great starts to the season where they'll avoid the home run derby. The reason why they avoid the home run derby is because they don't want to gas their arm out for the second half of the season, Mike, right? So it's a great exhibition and it's all that fun stuff and it's good for fans and to have, it's exciting stuff. But you think about the overall, that's where you'll see guys just kind of take a step back and I understand, so what effect is that going to have? Listen, Federer was in the final of the U.S. Open last year. It was a great final, by the way. And his run in there was pretty awesome to watch. Yeah. All eyes are going to be on him. All eyes are going to be on Shane as well, because we know that he's going after number 6, right? And that's going to be a talking point heading into Harris as well. So listen, while I love it, I can also think, man, I wish they would just go on there like as prepared as they can for that run that's going to be. But listen, when it comes to putting balls down, both of them are going to be in pretty good gear
Yeah,
going into that week.
yeah,
So,
yeah. I think so.
anyhow, Mike, a lot of other things to go and discuss. We haven't really talked about the Europeans a whole lot, Mike. Kachi's sitting in that number one spot when it comes to the boys across the pond. Let me see if I can bring up their ranking.
Big opportunity in Fulda for Victor. Big opportunity. I mean, he's number 3 right now. 1,000 or 2 ahead of David Alcade, and he's got to make sure that he finishes ahead of David, Jason, for the next couple of events, because he, how badly he wants to be on this Moscone Cup team. And he had a chance at the World Championship to put a real dent in it and laid an egg against Wojciech. So he's one that I'm really going to be watching closely in Germany. If he goes on a run, he could really kind of set himself up pretty nicely for, Reyes Cup for sure, and then possibly Moscone.
All right, I'm just bringing over this European tab. You guys can go find it on WNT Live Scores under rankings. And I mean, Kachi with that final performance.
To me, 3 through 7 is where the real action's at.
It's thick, Mike. It's thick, and there's a good mix of like proven commodities there, right? Filler, Alcade, and then guys who we think like they're deserving, and they've been knocking on the door, so to speak, and like a Victor. Look, I really like Victor, Mike. I mean, I really like that kid a lot.
Yeah.
And if I'm an American fan, though, I'm rooting for that guy to make it because
100%. The same with Mickey Krause, the same with Pius Labutis. I mean, get them on the team. They're great players, and they can beat anybody anytime, but get them on the team, send them to Florida, and let's see how they shake. So, we'd all love to see that.
Let's see how they shake. That's an interesting phrase to use there, Mike, because I think that, in fact, would be the case. And it's a whole different kind of animal. But this is like where you think about the killers of the World 9-Ball Tour, like a Kachi, like a Josh, even like a David now. I think he's earned that kind of respect as well, versus like these guys who are great in playing in tournaments, right? And who can really shake it up a little bit. Like there's going to be a lot of discussion when it comes to that 5th spot of the Americans. We saw them get trounced last year. I mean, absolutely embarrassed out of the gym. Make no mistake about it, Mike. But like I mentioned, if you're an American fan, you're rooting for one of these young rookie Europeans to make this team. Now, I said at the beginning of the year, that's what I said at the beginning of the year. I think 2 of them are going to go and make the team.
Well, you kind of have the idea that one of them would have to be the wild card, right? So, you're not going to.
I think in order for I don't think any rookie is going to get picked on a wild card for Team Europe.
I think one would have to. You're not going to get 2 rookies to go past Josh in the automatic spot.
Where are we at right now? 51, 58? Yeah, I guess from a point standpoint.
But you can solidify that if that second rookie is so clearly the number 4 guy on the ranking that you can't. That if you're Jason Shaw, you would look bad picking an Albin or a David or an FSR, right? So it just that's what they would have to do. To me, that's what I think that.
Well, Jason is going to be the one making that decision. I think he's where's he sitting at right now? Mike, number 7?
Jason's
right
not, he's in the conversation too. I mean, he's number 7. So he's still in the conversation for an automatic spot, which would make his life a lot easier too. So,
Well, it's going to put pressure on him as well. If a rookie gets on this team, which I expect it to happen. This is what really makes these next 45 days pretty exciting stuff because it's going to really affect how December is going to play out, Mike, for a lot of people. And listen, Victor is a monster. I think that stage is a different animal. Mickey's had a lot of success this year. Again, that stage is a different animal. Pius, I'm real high on that kid's game.
You just want to see him out there for the first time in the U.S. because they're going to be on the team a second or third time and they'll get comfortable and they'll be monsters again. But your best crack at them is their first time, and your best crack in their first time is if it's in the U.S. So that's why we're just.
Well, you don't want to go and shit the bed either, though, Mike. We've seen guys go out there who have great seasons, and then for the way that they do go and rattle, are never going to get considered for a wild card spot, Mike. I mean, we all know who we're talking about here when it comes to the European.
Give him a break. He's one of the nicest guys in the game.
I'm just saying, though, Mike. But the way you go and perform out there is going to make a big difference. I think it just adds a whole other level.
It is. Well, because they're so competitive. The European lineup is so competitive that you're only going to get one chance. But unless you earn it automatically, and Victor could go out there, not play great this year, and still make the team automatically next year and be fine. So I mean, you still got your opportunities, but you're gonna have to make those automatic picks.
Well, I'll tell you one kid who I want to see out there, and it's especially for the U.S. Open. Well, yeah, him as well for sure. But Moritz, Mike, I'm still really high on Moritz, but I remember last year at the U.S. Open, he had a really big opportunity, and I'll never forget that match where he's playing on TV table with a fever, holding like a hot coffee or tea in his hand and just shivering and willing himself to, make balls. And he was still very much in that match, but it was a big match, Mike, and he had a chance to, kind of take the lead a little bit, at least as far as getting a wild card spot or getting an automatic spot on Team Europe, and then it went away. So he's still in the conversation a year later. We're super high on his game. We're high on him as a person. So there's just so many guys. Listen, we talked about Alexa last year as well, Mike, at the end of the U.S. Open. Like, these are guys who are just hanging around. And then all of a sudden, listen, at the end of a major, you can see these guys kind of figure out a way to put themselves in the conversation. Mark Biesterbosch was in a final last year of the Spanish Open. There's a ton of guys who just hang around long enough, and if they got enough points, that's a good foundation, Mike.
Yeah, it is. And like I said, we got three, $30,000-$40,000 top prize, $50,000 top prize events still ahead of us. So if someone makes, a David Alcade, Alvin Ocean run in one of these last three events, changes everything.
Well, Mike,
we saw that last year.
100%. I mean, it came down to the wire last year. It came down to a final last year of the very last event, right?
Yeah,
because I think
Alvin came out of nowhere, and all of a sudden he's on the team.
Right. Yeah, because he was not going to make it on that team otherwise, But when you give resume plus a strong finish, congrats, son. You got your spot back on the team,
Yeah, right.
And so I hope we get that much drama this year. I expect it to be. And already, 8 months in, we got so many different routes that we can go and take and talk about and all that good stuff. And just a lot of things to be looking forward to. Are you going to be at the U.S. Open this year, Mike?
Oh, God. Make me look bad in front of everybody. No, I'm not.
Where are you going to be, Mike?
I've got another commitment for my bowling magazine that I have to be in Texas.
So I'm in Texas and I'm going to Atlantic City. You're in Wisconsin and you're coming to Texas during the U.S. Open.
Nothing I can do about that. But I'll be watching in my off hours.
Well, you better at least have your gear with you, Mike, so that we can
first U.S. Open I've missed in a long, long time.
It's going to be good stuff, Mike. We would not. There was a lot of other things going on within the pool world. I went to junior nationals, which was great. Congratulations to all those kids who were out there and got a spot in worlds. But part of being out there, Mike, I got to see our old boy, Mr. Ishon and Shane Tyree. It's been a month.
Here we go.
It's been a month, Mike, but I did get a chance to have a good conversation with them. We saw recently the post from Matchroom and ACBS, and here we are a year later. I remember being at the U.S. Open last year, and there was a big cloud the entire event. A big cloud over the Vietnamese players, a big cloud over some of the Polish players. Victor did not play in Hanoi last year. I think the kid was robbed of a pretty good opportunity to make that team last year. We didn't get to see Huang and some of these stars go and play out in Vietnam. And now here we are a year later, Mike, and looks like it's much of the same again.
Yeah, it is. I mean, the Asian Federation, which can act on its own, and the WPA can't do anything about it because that's what they allow their Continental Federation to do. The Asian Federation sent out another, threatening letter to all of its members, its national federations, the players, everyone, just outlining what's going to happen to them if they play in non-sanctioned events. So it's going to be interesting to, we saw from Emily's post from Matchroom that, everything's going to go ahead as planned in Vietnam, but it's not going to be without some tension. It's not going to be without a few people, probably having to back out. If anybody, some of the Asian players, and certainly maybe some of the Vietnamese players, the ACBS is threatening promoters who are involved in unsanctioned tournaments, and just the list of threats and actions and fines you have to pay and months you have to sit out if you're a player, things like that. It's really brutal. I mean, it's really heavy-handed. And I've sent letters to the ACBS. I've sent them to various federations in Asia, just asking them, tell me what the threat is if players play in both events. I'm starting to kind of lose a little bit of
it's territory, Mark. It's just marking your territory. That's what it seems like to me.
It's marking your territory, but they can still run their tournament. Who cares? They can run. The Predator World 10-ball event in Vietnam can run. Who cares? Let them have that event, and the Vietnamese government will still give the Vietnamese Federation money if they do it all. I don't know if they do or not. I'm not sure what there is to lose if these players play in a non-sanctioned event.
Yeah, I think it's just wanting to be the pipeline that it goes through, and I'm sure there's a lot of benefits to being a part of that conversation financially that is weighing in there. They're kind of just doing whatever they can to make it as difficult as possible when you're playing in their neighborhood. At least that's how.
I just look at stuff like, listen, I haven't seen, I hadn't seen the WPA try unsuccessfully to, run an event in Vietnam for years. Now all of a sudden a very successful event runs in Vietnam and they want to step all over it. So, it just kind of, it's so transparently, heavy-handed and bullyish that I would really like to them to explain to me what's at stake to them.
Well, maybe you'll have more success than I've had contacting the ACBS.
I'm not expecting to get a lot of response from them, but we'll see. I mean, I sent a couple letters off to a couple of people. We'll see if any of them respond. But it's not even worth talking to the WPA at this point because they have no control over their continental federations. The continental federations do whatever they want in those continents with their members. Short of the WPA saying you're out of line and we're going to kick you out as our federation, but they just put these bimbos in charge, just over a year ago. So, and
if you call them bimbos, Mike, they for sure aren't going to come on the show.
Well, I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah,
we'll see. It's just I don't understand it. We've talked about it till we're blue in the face with Ishan and WPA and European federation members. And listen, they're all basically just protecting their federations and their jobs and whatever because
that's right.
But I don't see how someone else running an event in Asia prevents these guys from continuing to hold their jobs. That's the part I don't get.
Well, I think it's
for them to
maintain control more than anything.
For them to threaten a promoter, I mean, here's what they say. Any promoter or supporter of a non-sanctioned event will not be allowed to deal with the ACBS member countries and its player for 1 year. Now, I don't understand what the hell that means. How can you tell someone, okay, you can't talk to the country of Vietnam? Does that make sense to you? So, no, I mean, it's just stupid shit that they just insist on forcing themselves into. So,
no, I agree, and it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate that we're still having to talk about it. It's unfortunate for the players to still have to deal with it, right, and still have that linger. We know what a massive success that event was, despite their attempts to derail it, and so the success far outweighs the issues last year. But I really hope it can just maximize its opportunity come this October, because Hanoi was something special. I plan on going out there this year, so maybe that's a little selfish of me as well. I wanted to see something great happen again. But yeah, I mean, and then you mentioned Predator announcing the World 10 Ball out of Vietnam in 2025, taking it out of Vegas. Mike, you got any thoughts on that?
No, I don't think we're moving the World Championship around. It doesn't have to stay in Vegas the rest of its life. I don't expect the world pool championship may move from one city in Saudi Arabia to another in the next year. Who knows? So I don't think that it has to sit in one place forever. I think it's almost kind of good to move it around. Maybe not every year, but move it around different parts of the world. If this is your World Championship, I don't think that that's a bad idea. So I don't have a problem with that at all. I was happy to hear that they followed up saying that they will continue to run a professional open event in the U.S., in its place. So whether it's just, kind of a rebranded Las Vegas Open, doesn't matter. There'll be another big pro tournament in the U.S. for people to play in. That's good too. So I don't have a big problem with that.
I hope they figure out a way to get the big players in there. And, the World 10 Ball was it. That was the main reason why a lot of these guys went over there. So I hope there's a way to continue to have that, because that event was pretty awesome. I did enjoy going out to the Rio and seeing some of the world's best players out there compete. I love the additions that they had, right? Like the mixed doubles and things like that as well.
They're talking about doing that again too.
Yeah. So I just hope it doesn't take away to what that CSI Rio event was, because that was pretty fun every year.
Well, my bigger what I'm most interested in seeing is the World 10 Ball Championship. Who's in the field once Hanoi comes and goes? Because that's the first event on this year's calendar that is an officially unsanctioned, you can't play in it event, right? Because the WPA went ahead and gave its stamp of approval on all the open.
Well, there's going to be a showdown, Mike, because there's going to be a lot of. There's going to be a lot.
And did you find it interesting, or was it just me that found it interesting that the World 10 Ball Championship, which will be long after that, and a WPA event, was announced by Josh Filler?
Well, I believe we expect Josh to be out there in Hanoi this year, although he wasn't last year, and that was a big talking point. So, I mean, the coincidence is not unnoticed, that's for sure.
Yeah, I just think that's kind of interesting, because you would have to assume that Predator, WPA, Vietnam, they all had this discussion before, having Josh Fuller in Vietnam to announce the World 10 Ball Championship. They had to know that there's this window coming up where, can he play or can't he play, and how are we going to make sure that he can? So that to me was very interesting.
You're giving him more credit than I would, Mike. That's for sure.
We all know that, the WPA's new sugar daddy, Joy. So what's, the ACBS is playing all heavy-handed and saying, we're banning all Asian players if they play in the Hanoi Matchroom event. Okay, what's going to happen when Joy finds out that all those players who played there can't play in the next big Joy Hayball event? I think there'll be some change in policy. So, it's just all these things that kind of that are percolating in the background that should make for some interesting viewing in the next year.
It's going to make for some interesting viewing in the next few months as well. Listen, I'm back at home, Mike, and we're going to continue to do more shows. The Helsinki Open's going on right now in Finland. Lots of guys are competing out there. What else is coming up? Obviously, the U.S. Open. We're going to have some preview shows on top of that as well. I plan on getting more guests and maybe even a Joey Ryan sighting on the show in the next few weeks as well. So, Mike, you got anything else before we get out of here, buddy?
No, I think we filled up everybody's heads full of garbage long enough.
It's been fun being back, man. It's good to get back on the saddle,
To shake off the rust a little bit, but we'll get back into it.
Yeah, listen, we still got to call out a lot more things and a lot more BS to kind of point our fingers at. But listen, the pool world is thriving right now, which is great. There's so much stuff to talk about. There's so many players who are making names for themselves. It's a really exciting time. Like I said, we're going to have more shows coming up. Keep your notifications on. I can guarantee you we're not going to be off for a month like we were recently. So thanks, everybody, for hanging out with us. Big shout-out to all of our sponsors on the show. You see them rotating throughout. Go give their pages a like and a share as well. Cannot do it without them. We'll see you guys real soon, and thanks.